Now today I'm going to get to go out on the open road with my GS1100E. It's a 1982. I've owned it since new. It's historically registered. It's got a lot of unique things that remind me of other times and places in my life because I've had it so long. I've got two of them. One is really a donor bike, and I've got two sets of bodywork that I can make it a West Cooley bike. But the one thing, and I've been tempted over the years, and I've been tempted to sell it, and thank God I've never sold it, because at this point in my life, I just enjoy riding it every chance I possibly can get. I love to just get out on the open road. It's relaxing, it's comfortable, it floats my boat, and I think in my case, it's a bike I really find super attractive. And by the way, you can watch this in 4K. Just adjust your settings on the bottom of the YouTube channel. So I think it's pretty funny that we're coming up on 42 years owning this motorcycle. And I look back at the day I bought it from Westwood Suzuki, and I think, if I only could have looked into the future and seen the life this bike would have. This bike is a real survivor. It's never not been driven. It's never been in storage. It's probably been ridden a little harder than average, and it's withstood the test of time in every way. I wish I stood the test of time as well. But it's become a part of my life. I've owned it more than half of my life now. And every time I come out to the garage, like today, I check out the weather, have my coffee, and I look around. This bike talks to me. And sometimes when it talks to me, it says, come on, let's go for a ride. It's supposed to rain today. And it still wants, it doesn't care, it wants to go for a ride. I agree. Come on, boys, let's go. Come on, breakfast is served. So anytime I go to ride, I always try to get all the chores done around the farm, feed the fish, feed the birds, take care of anything Karen has on her honey-do list, clean the bike. I just put a fresh coat of kaolin wax on the bike just the other day, and I just think now the maintenance is so easy, just wiping it off, the bugs come right off, whatever. That kaolin wax is good stuff. Anyway, we got some work I have to take care of in the garden here, and pretty soon, well, you can see, there's always something to do on an old 100-year-old house. It always needs some maintenance, but I got a little tip I want to share about that kaolin wax. This is interesting. So what I wanted to show, a couple days ago, I put on the video about the kaolin wax. I had waxed the minivan. And this is what an ordinary car, this one's not done yet. No wax or just very little wax from last year. Now, look at the difference here. This is pretty funny. If you look at how the water comes off of that, that is pretty impressive. I always think, that's what keeps this. I don't want to buy another car either. I try to keep this one as nice as possible. And again, to Joe Padula, thank you. Boy, if that doesn't beat up, that's amazing stuff. Now, as I'm having my final cup of coffee before heading out, I think about, this is my 1947 ERCOUPE, which, by the way, I painted, and 2833 Hotel, and I never should have sold it. I think about that every time I look at this picture. I fell in love with this bike right from the first day I rode it. I just knew right away this was a keeper. And as I look back, almost 42 years, it's looked like it's been a good decision. And my life has been full of a lot of things I sold, decisions I made. I sold that ERCOUPE. I sold my 55 Chevy. I sold the various cars and motorcycles, my H1s and H2s. Wish I had them all back now. But I'm really glad I never sold this guy. one thing that happened to me, and I'm sure it happens to other people too, as you get older, you realize there's a lot of things in life you can't get back. You can always get more money. You can always work 2 jobs. You can always borrow money. You can whatever, print more money. But once you sell something that's a treasure, you really can never get it back. And there's so many things in my life. I just look at them and I think, what a shame that I sold them. But again, I'm really glad I kept this guy. And some people have no emotional connection to their motorcycles. They're nothing but toasters or refrigerators. But then there's the other group of people that have a passionate relationship with these machines. And most of my friends, fortunately for me, fit into that category. My good friend Joe Padula and I were both a couple of years ago at the Ruts Up meetup, where they had a lot of bikes from this era, Kawasaki's and Suzuki's, and he made a comment that rings true. These bikes have a very different sound, a much nicer exhaust sound, a metallic sound. Because they're air cooled, you get the sound coming through the fins, much different than a modern bike. And I almost never post up a GS video and I don't get some comment from somebody who watches the video and comments, boy, I had that bike back in blank, 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 and I blank, 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 and I wish I never sold it. It's almost like as soon as I read 2 sentences into the comment, I know it's going to be a sad ending. And then what happens, you go later on in life, you want to go buy that bike back and you find out it's almost impossible to find one in really, really nice condition. And I am so fortunate to have 2 of them. And even though one is a parts bike and a donor bike, it doesn't matter. I am just super happy when I go out to the garage and I look at the motorcycles and I have one from every 10-year period. It makes my riding experience just so much more fun and so much full of the good memories. And of course, all the retro bikes they make now that look a little bit like these 80s bikes, I'm not so sure. I almost bought one actually when I bought the MT-09, but they're not really the real McCoy. And this one, for sure, is the real McCoy. Now, to all the younger guys that watch the videos and you've got basically never had the opportunity to ride one of these, it's a unique feel. It doesn't feel like an R6. It has a unique power delivery and a very, very unique sound coming out of those air-cooled fins. I talk about other bad decisions I've made, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I had one of the original H1s. I custom painted it. Oh my God, I had so much fun challenging other bikes. At the time, it was one of the quicker bikes, and we'd pretend drag racing going down Main Street. And when I for some reason, I sold it to my good friend at the time, the late Frank Straub, Ray's brother. And he kept it for many years and he loved it. And I bought a newer H1, so I had 2 of them. And then I did the same thing with that one. I custom painted it and and then I sold that and bought an H2. So I was just caught up in that whole era. And now as I look back at if I had the ability to just put them in storage, would I like to have all of those bikes back? It would be like a miracle to have that stuff back. And I'm jealous of Luciano, who has an H1 in his collection. with 78,000 miles. I think back of how many of those miles must have been spent up in the Lake George area. Some of those really, really beautiful summer rides. You'd go up there, it'd be a lot cooler. All those back roads, just awesome. And there really only was one time I really came close to selling it. I don't remember what the need I had for the money was, whatever. But I do remember Andy Lee making me an offer I almost couldn't refuse. And then I decided, I'm going to keep it. That's all there is to it. And as I look back now, that turned out to be one of the best decisions of my life. And I know Andy Lee, he was an excellent modeler, a good friend for many, many years. He went on to buy exactly the same bike. And when he sold his, he gave me all his extra accessories he had for. And over the years, I'd be riding this bike and I'd just be thinking, man, am I glad I didn't sell it? Am I glad I didn't sell it? And some people have no interest in these older bikes, but boy, if you have an interest in older bikes and that the experience of riding older motorcycles, this one is just about as good as it gets. All right, it's time to head back to the farm, see what Karen has planned for the day, pick some tomatoes, feed the fish again, and put another coat of Colonite wax on the bike. You still getting tomatoes out of the garden? How many you got? But we ought to go in business. I could make some money. Selling tomatoes here. Wish I could grow motorcycle parts. It's hard to believe we're still getting tomatoes out of our garden. You'd think the season would be over? It's not. The tomatoes that never end. Pretty much every time I ride this bike, I am so glad I never sold it. I'm sorry I sold my ERCOUPE. Sorry I sold all my cars that I had. All those cars would have been just so cool to have right now. And the money just went into salami sandwiches. It's amazing. You can never figure that out. So I don't know. I'm glad I never sold this guy. Coming up on 42 years, over 78,000 miles, and I'm glad I never sold it. So I'm hoping you never sold anything that you really treasure. And guys, one and all, thanks so much for watching.